Welcome back to SMKR. This is your host, Steve. Up next is issue 4 of Eaglemoss, Build Your Own DB5.
Bond. James Bond.
Welcome back. I'm super excited to look at issue 4 with you guys. First off, we'll go ahead and look at the magazine, and then we'll look at the parts real closely, and then we'll build the parts in sequence. We'll identify the screws that you have to use for each assembly. As in previous issue, the screws weren't marked, but I was able to figure them out, so if you stay tuned, you'll know exactly what screws to use where on these parts. We're going to assemble parts of the engine, and we're also going to assemble what we call the engine boot or the engine compartment. And then from there, we'll look forward to doing issue 5. I have issue 5, so stay tuned for that later on. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with this. And if you haven't done so already and you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Also, if you're in the US and you want to subscribe to Eaglemoss DB5, it's readily available. I'll put a link below in the description on how you can subscribe to this. It's been a fun build so far. I've enjoyed every minute of it. So I'll be right back and we'll get started. And with issue 4, of course, we do get this fantastic magazine. I've been reading through the pages of this, and there's a lot of great information on the movies of James Bond, the actors, and the women of James Bond, so it's fantastic. With issue 4, we get 4 parts packs. We get parts pack 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I'll be right back. We'll look over the magazine here first, and we'll show you where we'll start with the build for issue 4. Let's go to the pages of this magazine, and of course it starts off with a little section here on how to order this kit, and the table of contents, which comprise of your car parts, how to start the car, the making of Thunderball, Bond actors. So let's look here. They give us a highlight of all the parts that are included in here, and like I was saying, we get some more continuation here of the engine. We get the engine block, rear bulkhead, some pulleys, fans, heater tank, alternator control, air cleaner, brake servos, and of course all the screws that go with it. And we start off with building the oil filter assembly and the right engine block. Next we get into the rear bulkhead, the screen washer and top, and we get into the heater tank, left and right bulkheads, the right brake servo, then we get into the left brake servo, and lastly I think we get into the air box, the alternator control, and the brake fluid reservoirs. Then we get into the magazine itself. They talk about the making of Fireball, and worldwide box office hit of 141.2 million. This was back in the day. It was released in 1965, December 29th, with a budget of about $9 million. So it was initially budgeted a lot lower, but it was such a great success in the 2 previous movies that this one was able to be made and was a success also. And then we start getting into a little bit about the details on making the movie with the directors and the producers, and then they introduce us a little bit about some of the gadgets and where it was filmed inside, where it was filmed at the Bahamas. And then we get into the actors, and we talk about Adolfo Seeley. He should look familiar to you from James Bond. Claudine Auger, some beautiful women here, always in the Bond movies, and Fiona Volpe. She was a beautiful woman also. And lastly, they get into, I think that's it. That's the female actresses. I don't think I skipped any. A wonderful photograph here of the press meeting the three women together on the beach there in the Bahamas. And lastly, the clash of this scuba squad. So this was the first widescreen filmed movie under the water, and very spectacular, widescreen views that were done for this film. So let's get started on the first part of the build, which will be the putting the engine blocks together. I'll get those parts out and I'll be right back. And here's the first bag of parts. This would be 11A and B, and I can tell already this is the other engine half and some of the other components that we'll be assembling for this first step. Contained in parts 11 bag, we received the oil filter assembly, which this filter assembly is kind of a rarity, and one of the latest auctions on eBay, one actually sold for 145 quid. And we also received the right engine block. This is all made out of metal, so we'll be putting that together with the left side and some of the screws that we have left over from before. Now, we had 3 of each available from the previous issue, so we'll only use 2 of the C's and 2 of the D's. So the first thing we will do is we will assemble the fuel filter assembly. And that's it right there. It goes on the right side of the engine half. We don't have to use any screws or glue for this. It does have a keyway on it. It has a flat edge along with the tab that's on here. You can probably just see that flat edge. So we'll just simply line that up and it will simply just snap in. Just like that. Next we will assemble the engine halves. And when we do that, we'll use 2 of the C-type screws. And those would be the black ones that I showed you earlier. So we'll take the other engine half right there and we'll just put these together. And remember, these are both die-cast metal. And we will just screw these in. Okay, so we'll take these screws and put them in. And that should hold the engine halves together. Okay, so both screws are in and it's secure. So before installing the intake manifold on the engine block, you want to make sure your carburetor intakes are fully installed, because they're going to get locked in place after you mount the intake manifold, and your exhaust. So you want to have your exhaust in place too. So we'll do that now. They just simply slide in on the tabs here. Okay, then we can mount this down on top of the block. Okay, like that, and like that. Then we can go ahead and put our screws in. Go ahead and put our screws in on top. These are the D screws. And it's a kind of a tight squeeze underneath the distributor cap where the other one goes. Going to have to kind of force it. And there we go. And we got our screws in. Now we assemble packet number 12, and this is what they look like come all wrapped up here. I'll go ahead and take these out. We'll get a closer look at the parts and then we'll assemble this issue. With issue 12 here, we received the rear bulkhead for the engine compartment. We received the windshield washer fluid reservoir. Now the white depicts actually glass. These were made out of glass with your washer pump motor on top. We also received the alternator fan pulley, the torsional vibration dampener, that would be these 4 items here, and we received 6 of the Q screws. All these parts are plastic. There's no metal except for the screws. I'll be right back and we will assemble these. Before we assemble parts bag 12, we got to use some of the parts that are located in parts bag 13. So this is parts bag 13, and it appears that all the parts in here are plastic, but these would be the side pieces to the engine boot or the engine compartment, and we'll get those out so we can start assembling part or the issue 12 that precedes these. I'll be right back. With parts pack 13, we received the header tank, and that's made out of plastic. Has a nice little chrome cap on top. We received the right brake servo. That's plastic also. And we received the left and right bulkheads for the engine compartment or the engine boot. Now we can go ahead and assemble parts pack 12 now that we have these sides. I'll be right back and we'll start that assembly. We will be using these Q-type screws to assemble all the accessories inside the engine compartment or the engine boot. We'll be using the left bulkhead for this. Now we'll be attaching the windshield washer fluid container with this, and I tried to do a test fit. There's a locating pin hole right there, and it seems to be kind of small, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is drill it out a little bit so that way we can get this to go down a little bit easier. I'm just going to go ahead and use a pin vise for this. I'm not sure the exact size I'm using. I'm just going to make the hole larger and just going to drill it through just a little bit, just enough to remove some of the paint and some of the material. And now I should be able to test fit this, and it goes right down real easy without breaking anything. They tell us to use G-type screws for this. We did not receive any G-type screws with any of the previous issues, so it just kind of makes sense that we're going to use these Q screws that came along with this pack. The Q screws have that flat and they're wide type screws to be able to cover these parts here and hold them in place. We turn this around so we can get a better view with the side camera, and we'll go ahead and install these. Okay, so just a matter of putting them in there. We're going into plastic with this, so it's a little bit fiddly but not too bad, and you're just going to want to use a little bit of pressure to get the threads to dig in. And that's one of them, and same with the other one. And there you have it. There's the washer fluid bottle. Next we will assemble the alternator fan pulley, crankshaft pulley, and torsional vibration dampener. And you'll see here we have the distinctive red Aston Martin fan. Now previously we installed that fan. We're going to need to get that out of our way so we can do our assembly with this. So I'm just going to pull that off out of the way along with the belt, and we will start this assembly. First thing they want us to do is clip this part right here to the assembly, and just like it just squeezes in, just like that, kind of a press fit. Next we're going to install the smaller pulley here to that fan, and you can see it's got some little gear teeth on it there. You see those? That's going to go in right there. Once again, a press fit. Just like that. Next we're going to take the vibration dampener, and it's going to go down on top of this right here. First we'll go ahead and press the crankshaft pulley, and same thing here, it's got the gearing on it there. It's going to slide in through that, just like that, and then it's going to go on the crankshaft. There we go. That's all installed there. Okay. Be very careful when you press that in place. I pressed it down. Next they want us to put the fan belt on. Just like that. And then next we can attach the fan blades. Just like that. And there we have it. Let's move on to the next step. The last step has us attach this to the engine block. So it looks like it probably goes like that. We'll bring over the engine block and look at the front there, how we have that, and that looks like that just press fits in place just like that. There we go. Very carefully that snapped into place. You heard it. I didn't want to break anything, but it worked out, and I didn't damage nothing. So there you have it. We have an assembled fan and alternator assembly. Next we will install the header tank, or previously called the power box, and that just simply goes down into these two slots right here. Just like that. Maybe hard for you to see, but you can see it's kind of got a spacer so it sits upright, and then we're going to put the same Q screws in on the bottom. Go ahead and hold that in place while I put this in. And I'm just going to get both of them started before I tighten them down. And there we go. Next we will install the aft bulkhead to the left and right bulkheads. Simply slots in. Like that. That slides in also into a tab there. Okay, so then I slotted them in. I had to be very careful that I didn't snap them or break them, and they are done and assembled. Now we will assemble the right brake booster, and same thing, it has a locating tab that fits into a small hole, and when I test fit it, it fit just fine. So it simply just goes in just like that, and then when you turn it over you can see where our screw needs to go into on the other side here. And we will go ahead and install the screw. Once again, it's a Q screw. It's just gonna hold it in place, just like that. And that's all we do with step 13 here. We'll get out 14 and we'll look at those parts and we'll assemble those next. Here's what parts pack 14 looks like. Everything's nicely wrapped and protected. I'll go ahead and open this up and we'll look at all the parts, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the assembly. Here's the parts included with parts pack 14. We received the left brake servo, the airbox, the alternator control, the brake fluid reservoirs. There's 2 of them. Of course, this is the cover for the airbox, and the breather hose. And we received the base for the airbox. We also received a bag full of a conglomeration of more screws. We received more Q screws. Looks like we received some C screws, some more L screws. All these parts are plastic, and I'll be right back. We'll assemble this section. We did receive a new type of screw with this issue, and that would be the P screw. The P screw is very similar to the C screw, however the shank is a lot skinnier. So we received 3 of the P's, and we will be utilizing those for the breather assembly. We'll go ahead and install the ducting, and we're going to use the L screw for that. Get that ready. Put the screw in on top. Just like that. Next, this assembly goes in. Like that. Gonna have to try to look in there to see if we can line the holes up. And looks like they're lined up just like that. Alright. That one's in. And that one's in. There we go. Next we attach the air intake, and that is keyed. It's got a flat edge to it. Basically like that. And it mounts to our right side panel there, and you can see the holes line up there just like that. Turn it over, and this is where we'll put in the Q screws for that. And there we have that. We have the air cleaner in place. Got a few more steps to go. I'll be right back. Next we're going to install the alternator control. I did a test fit on it, and I'm going to need to drill the little locating hole, the smaller one, just like I did before with the pin vise. There we go. And kind of a little bit of a tight squeeze here once we get it in. And there we go. And once again we use the Q screws to attach it. Do this where I can see it better. There we go. And it's in. And the last step for issue 4, we will install the brake fluid reservoirs. And they simply go on the firewall on the back here. There's a couple openings here for them. And well, once again we'll be using Q screws for that. These mount with the smaller side on top here. A little bit of fiddly there, you heard that snap in. Once again, a Q screw. There's one. Get the next one in. There we go. And we'll put the last Q screw in. And there you have it. Brake reservoirs are all in. And there you have, we have completed issue 4 of the Aston Martin DB5. We did a lot of work to the engine. We got most of that assembled and completed, along with the engine boot or engine compartment. And this is what it looks like as it's assembled. And I hope you enjoyed this build. I had a lot of fun with it. If you would like to subscribe to this, right now it's only available for US subscribers. I'll put a link down below where you can subscribe to this. Other than that, it's been a lot of fun. Stay tuned for issue 5 as we proceed with the DB5 build. Thanks for watching, everybody, and happy modeling.